Hey there, my fellow author. I'm Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, an old soul kind of writer living my dream as a full-time author and authorpreneur. But I didn't start out living a confident, creative lifestyle. I struggled with the fears and the mental and emotional barriers that so often plague writers at all stages of their author career. But the truth is that with the right knowledge, tools, and training, you can overcome those barriers. I'm here to teach you how I've developed a lifestyle that's allowed me to publish 19 books and counting. Each week, as you tune into the Confident Fiction Author podcast, you'll get clarity on the steps you need to take to advance your writing career. Whether it's developing your ideal writing routine, tackling new skills like dictating your fiction, or overcoming the obstacles life throws your way, this podcast will help you live a more confident, creative lifestyle. Let's get started. Hey there, my friend, and welcome to this episode of the Confident Fiction Author podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, and today I want to talk to you about writing beyond your own experiences and how you can accurately and respectfully portray other cultures. In fact, I did an entire episode on sensitivity readers. That's episode number 28, Should You Hire a Sensitivity Reader? So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a story idea that included a character or culture outside of your own, but you really hesitated to write that character? Maybe you thought, what if I get it wrong? What if readers call me out? They're like, hey, you don't have any personal experience with that. That's not what you are. How dare you write that? So if that sounds familiar, just know you are not alone. So I want to talk about how you as a fiction author can respectfully and confidently write beyond your own experiences. Because let's be honest, if we're only writing what we are or what we've experienced, our story worlds are going to be pretty small. They're going to be very limited only to what we are. So I'm going to share some principles and practices that will help you avoid pitfalls while also opening up that depth to your stories that you need when you're writing beyond your own experiences so that you can give your readers a full and realistic story world. So let's get into it. All right, so why does this matter? Why does it matter that we get things accurate? I mean, we are fiction writers after all, right? We're creating these story worlds, sometimes really fantastical worlds that other people can just get immersed in and get lost in and get swept away by this epic story that we're telling. So how important is it that it's accurate or that we're really portraying things authentically? And I think that's the thing is readers do connect with that authenticity. They connect with when something is fictional. You are creating fictional worlds and characters, but they are based on real things. Even if you're writing fantasy, like to a degree, you're still writing the emotions and the cultural touch points that people will recognize. And when those are done authentically, that's when you really make that connection with readers. The other aspect of that is if you are writing real world fiction, say beyond fantasy, or even if you're writing fantasy and you're portraying other cultures in it, you want to do those authentically so that those cultures are shown in a real way. They're not just being played out for the purpose of the story and you're just going with what has the biggest emotional impact. We definitely are going for big emotional impact in our stories, but when it's done authentically, when it has that ring of authenticity to it, readers will pick up on that, especially if you go beyond stereotypes. And let me just get into stereotypes here because that can break trust really quickly. And especially if someone is familiar with that culture or that, I'm talking about cultures, it could be a disability. It could be just anything that you have not personally experienced. And someone who has personally experienced it, or they know someone who has, and you're not portraying that authentically and you're just relying on stereotypes, readers will pick up on that because we have had a lot of exposure in the world. Like we are, much more attuned, I think, to the different issues that people have and experiences and all, yet we still have those stereotypes. And just before I get too deep into this, I've mentioned this a few times. If you've listened to my podcast or been into some of my other things that I've done, I am a tribal member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I write historical fiction. So all of my main characters in my 18 works of fiction are American Indians. So that is, dealing with stereotypes, and there's just so much, even today, even in today's media and really popular TV shows and movies that are just really playing in to those stereotypes. And sometimes I feel like, haven't we gotten beyond that? Like we know this now. Like why are we still playing on these stereotypes? So that is a way to really break trust with your readers. And on the reverse side of that, if you're not doing stereotypes and you're portraying things accurately and you've really done that deep research, readers pick up on that and they're like, wow, that's not something I've heard of. That's a different angle. And that's a different piece that I didn't think about with that culture or with that disability or with that other thing that I've not experienced myself. And that's really not what I would have expected. That's not something that I would have picked up on. So I feel like I've learned something and I've grown as a human. So you can give that gift to your readers when you are really going for that authenticity and going beyond the stereotypes. So it just really, really matters. And I think that writing the quote, the other, I think people call it the other, it is totally possible. And it's powerful even when it's done with care, when it's done with that deep research, when you are really putting your heart and your mind into it to get it right and to do it authentically and avoid those stereotypes, break those stereotypes when you can in your stories. And there are several ways you can do that, from having another character who is assuming the stereotypes and the character that can correct those stereotypes. And it can be done in a fun, engaging way. But whenever you incorporate that into your stories, you are really building that trust and that rapport with the readers. And in the end, still giving them that powerful emotional experience that they came into your piece of fiction wanting. Some common mistakes that I've already brought up a few of them, but really leaning on cliches or movie tropes, those stereotypes, I think we have to be especially guarded in today's media because we have a trust in this generation, I think, to a degree that, hey, we've learned these things. We're quote sensitive, or we're aware. We have this awareness of all of these different things. So the stuff that's coming out in movies or TV shows, we're wanting to rely on those. We're wanting to lean on those tropes and the things that are portrayed in those stories because we're like, well, they must have gone to the source and they know what they're talking about. They're aware of these things, and so I'm getting an authentic portrayal of that other that I haven't experienced personally. So I really want to caution you to guard against that. Guard against relying on these modern even books, movies, TV shows that are coming out and thinking that you can look to those for inspiration, and you can look to those for inspiration, but then do your deeper research. Do your research and really call out and question if you're leaning too much on those cliches and those tropes that you've seen, especially in today's media that's coming out. Now, the other thing is, I kind of mentioned like maybe you could have a character that gets it wrong and then you have another character that corrects them. One thing you want to be careful with is not making it preachy or over-explaining these cultural things to where it feels more like it's shoehorned in and it's like, okay, everybody sit down, it's lesson time, we're going to go over why this, and this is wrong. And so you want to not overdo it. You don't want to overdo or over-explain these cultural, or like I said, if it's someone with a disability and it's like, here, let me give you the full breakdown of what this is like. So make it natural, make it a part of the story, but as long as you're making it accurate, really that's what you're going for versus over explaining it. So weave it in there where it's natural without over explaining it. And a part of that is making a character a spokesperson instead of a person. So this is something that is really, really challenging. And I see it so much in stories, in books, and in movies where this person, their role in the story is to just be a spokesperson for that culture or for, the issues that is in the story. So they're just their quote representation, but they're really just representing this issue and they're not a person themselves. So when we're creating characters in other cultures or just whatever the other is, other life experiences, other traumas that they've had, we tend to want to put them in that position of being the guide or the spokesperson or that all-wise, all-knowing kind of person around this one topic, and they're not a person themselves. So that's something to consider whenever you're looking at creating a diverse cast of characters or tackling a specific cultural issue, is that character that you're having in there. You don't want them to just be a spokesperson. You want them to be a person first. And that leads me into some guiding principles that you can take into consideration, and that is to write people first and culture second. I do want to emphasize here that culture typically plays a big part in shaping who that character is, who that person is. So you want to understand their background. You want to understand their culture or their disability or their trauma, whatever it is that they're coming from, because that is going to influence who they are as a person, but it's not the whole of them. So there are a lot of other factors that are going to play into it. Their religion, their parents, the kind of home that they grew up in, their paradigms about life, their job, income level, all of these things are a part of their life too. And while culture may play a big role in shaping who they are, know that a lot of other factors are shaping your characters, and take those into consideration and let that guide you in really writing the character first and the culture as a part of that and a part of shaping it, but not as them as a whole person. So think about the other factors that are shaping them as a character. The other thing is to remember that we have shared humanity. Like, we are all humans. We do have those unique identity markers in our lives, like culture or disabilities and all. So you want to merge that shared human experience with their unique identity, and that will get you an authentic character and a multi-dimensional character versus someone who is just a spokesperson for that other that you're writing, or they're a little too far away from it and they're just like kind of blended in with the rest of the cast of characters. There's nothing wrong with them standing out and standing, on their culture or on, the issue that they've dealt with. That's a part of who they are, but it's that shared humanity and the unique identity merged together that creates an authentic character. So that's something that I see with Native Americans. A lot of people, it's almost like Native Americans are like a realm outside of humanity. And something that I encourage authors to remember is Native people are people. We're all of the human race. And that's something that I see like with the Chickasaw Nation. I do a lot of work with them. And one of the things that they like to really put out there is that Chickasaw history and American history is a shared history. And that's something that they really put forward is, hey, we are a part of American history, and here's how we've impacted it and how American history has impacted us, and we have this shared history. So we have the shared humanity aspects of it. You have the unique identifying markers. So when you merge those together, you get authentic characters and backgrounds to put into your stories. Okay, let's bring this into some practical steps for you. So what you might be expecting here and what so many recommend is that you get a sensitivity reader, that you get someone who is of that other representation that you're wanting to include, whether it's another race or a disability, someone who's been through this trauma that you're writing. And so you get a sensitivity reader to go over what you've written. You've done your research, you've done your deep dive, you did your best to follow these principles and really let them guide your story. And now you're like, okay, did I get it right? Did I get an A+ on my paper, or is it going to get an F? And that's really how people approach sensitivity readers. I think it's like they're going to grade their paper, and if they get anything less than an A+, then I've got rewriting to go back and do, and then I can see if I pass. And some authors I have heard and known who kind of get that F, and they stick the manuscript in the drawer, and they really never go back to it because they feel like there's, if they change the thing that the sensitivity reader felt needed to be changed, that they now are not, it's not a story. It is taken away the whole story. So here's what I want to say. And I actually have a lot to say about sensitivity readers because I've been asked about being a sensitivity reader and an editor for authors who are doing Native American characters. And I actually encourage authors to not go that route, to not go the route of the sensitivity reader. If you have done, or you really want to, or maybe your publisher is requiring it, I understand, and there are some benefits to it, but there are some really big pitfalls with sensitivity readers. One, like I said, it's kind of like one person grading your paper, and you're either going to get a passing or a failing grade or something in between, and you're having to rewrite your story. And that one person is speaking for an entire culture or an entire group of people that they've only had their experiences. They're still that person who has been shaped by all of the other factors I talked about, their upbringing, their religion, all of these things have shaped them as a person. And so, yes, they also had their culture shaping them, but you're getting their sensitivity, I guess you could say, from all factors of their life and their life experiences. So you're only having one person representing this whole entire culture. So for me, like people who want me to do sensitivity reading as a quote Native American, I'm like, there's no way that I couldn't even represent my own tribe, the Choctaw Nation, because we are a diverse people. Like the people within there, some things that some people would find offensive, other people would heartily agree with. So to hang your entire story on one person's sensitivity is just something that I really caution. Now, to have a sensitivity reader and take what they do give you and balance it out with your resources and maybe someone else from within that culture, another expert. Like for me, I work with the historic preservation department and the language department. So I work with different people. So I'm getting a lot of different feedback. Plus I'm doing my own deep dive research. So what I want to say is if you do use a sensitivity reader, have them as a part of your team and not the whole team with your manuscript. So that's a practical step. I could do a whole episode on this topic, but let's go ahead and move into some other steps that you can take. And that is to avoid token characters. I touched on this a bit where, you like have that person who is the spokesperson for the tribe or for the culture. Pardon me, I do use a lot of like tribe references and all because that's my world. That's where I'm at. But, if you're doing a culture or a different representation, like I said, a disability or something, and you're like, you want to have this character who is in a wheelchair because you want to represent that as diversity. So you're kind of putting them in to the adventure, you're putting them into the story, but really the purpose is you just have them there just so that you can have that diversity. So they are just that token character. In Native circles, we call it the token Indian. I'm not going to be your token Indian kind of thing. So there is that aspect of it, and that could be carried too far. Like I think we want to have people included, and we want people on the stage, for this whole diverse of humanity. Like we want that quote representation. but you want it in an authentic way. So you want to avoid those token characters, and specifically with Native Americans, one that I often see is, quote, the wise guide. And that's where you have that kind of that stoic, wise, all-knowing Native American who has these sometimes convoluted answers, poetic answers to every situation, and they're really not a real person. And so you want to, there's nothing wrong with having a wise guide in your story, but just make sure that it's not just a token position, so that you can include, the Native American or the person in the wheelchair in the story, versus them having them play a real role and really contribute to the story and to the reader's experience. The last practical step I have for you is let culture show up in natural ways. Again, not shoehorning it in where it's like, okay, we're going to have this ceremony, or we're going to have, this certain situation where it's kind of awkward with this person with their disability. And it's like, you just want to show the challenge that people, who are in wheelchairs, they, not being able to get up on curbs and different things. And so you put this in there, but it's really not a part of the story. So you can absolutely have those things in there, but let them show up naturally. Let them contribute to the story, and that will lend to that authenticity that your readers want to experience, and really connect with that character, and really connect with their struggle, or with seeing the beauty in in another culture that they had not seen or thought about experiencing before. So just let those things show up in natural ways in your stories. Put them in your outline when you can, so that they can, quote, show up naturally when you're writing the draft. So create circumstances as you're doing your pre-writing and all, that you can let culture and other things show up naturally in your story. I want to just bring it down really personal to me right now with writing Native American characters, American Indian. Actually, our favorite term is what the Chickasaw Nation has, and that's First Americans. So First American characters, and for me, specifically Choctaw. I've written 7-8 books now, I think, on specifically with Choctaws and Choctaw main characters. Most of them are fiction, but I always tell people I lean heavy on the history and heavy on the fiction with my historical fiction. So it's been a journey. It's been fantastic. I have done some really, really deep research in the stories that I've written. I have talked to dozens, if not really hundreds, of people across Native America to be able to bring that authenticity to my stories. And then the other tribes that I've written about is, of course, Chickasaws. We're close in tribal relationships. And my first nonfiction book was actually a World War I hero who was Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Scotch, and Irish. So he had a whole blend of nationalities, lived in Oklahoma, but I was able to do that book with Chickasaw Press. So I've had a lot of experience with, and then the other one that I've done is Omaha Indians, which was my Doc Beck Western series. So that's been a fantastic experience. Actually, Omaha and Choctaw history, whenever I was doing that research, I'm like, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, but a lot of similarities in the journey that they went on in history as a tribe. So what I've learned through all of that is really that depth and that authenticity and that breaking stereotypes, all of the things that are hopefully in my books based on feedback that I've gotten that's in my books, that comes from just really having true respect for these cultures, my own culture and other people's culture, and really listening. That has, I think, been something that has contributed the most to my depth and all. Like, I do a lot of reading, do a lot of research and all, but really listening to the people of that other culture or that other, just quote the other that I'm writing. Like in my last book 5 in my Choctaw Tribune series, I have a character who is Chickasaw and she's deaf. And that was another thing that I had to really deep dive into that I have not personally experienced. But I think just listening and picking up on the heart of people and who they are as a person, and then seeing how their culture or their disability, whatever it is that you're writing, is a part of who they are. And I think that's going to be your biggest key as a fiction author, is just having that genuine respect and listening to other people and to their stories and really getting to know who they are as a person so that you can write that into your characters so that they feel like they are real people to your readers. I want to emphasize again that writing beyond your own experiences is not only possible and worth it, but really necessary as a fiction author. When I think about how closed and bland and flat and unrealistic our stories would be if we only wrote about what we are and where we've lived and what we've experienced, what kind of worlds are we creating and what are we giving our readers if we're just having this mono kind of view of the world? So it is totally worth it. It is totally possible to do it and to do it well as a fiction author. And I just hope with this episode that you're walking away encouraged and feeling equipped that you can write your stories with that confidence. And I just want to say that if you'd like to go deeper, especially when it comes to writing Native American characters with authenticity and respect, I have a resource for you. It's called Fiction Writing American Indians. It's a digital course that I created. And in that, I walk you step by step through how to bring Native characters to life in your fiction without falling into stereotypes and misrepresentation. I dive deep into how to do your research and avoid so many pitfalls that I see authors and creators falling into when it comes to writing American Indian characters. So you can find that over at fictioncourses.com/American Indians. There you can also download a free guide that I have called 5 Stereotypes to Avoid When Writing Native Americans and in Your Fiction. You can download that for free. It's a short guide, but it is meaty, and you'll be able to pick up some really, really good tips if you're writing American Indian characters. All right, my friend, that is it for this week's episode. Until next time, I just want to say that we don't have a word for goodbye in Choctaw. We say Chipisala Chiki. I will see you again soon. Take care.